I am a tutor, and these teachers are not lying. These babies cannot read. Like, unless they know exactly what the word is, they're not able to sound it out to figure out what the word is. For example, take the word cheat. They will know that C makes a sound and H makes a sound, maybe. But they don't know that C and H go together to make a sound. They don't know that EA goes together to make a sound. They don't know that ING goes together to make a sound. They don't know that ED goes together to make a sound. So cheat, cheated, cheating, they would not know how to go ing and then piece it all together. They don't know how to do that. And maybe that is what is meant by they don't teach phonics anymore. I don't know. Just based off tutoring, I've been having to go back into my kindergarten and first grade bag to remember what my teachers taught me. But it's like, how do you teach someone phonics who don't even have the basics down? And now they're 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th grade up into high school, and it's like I don't know how to do that. Not to mention the math y'all are teaching these babies. The people who are tutoring are not the ones that learned that math. How do you expect me to tutor math if I don't know the math that you were teaching? Y'all need to figure that out, because I'm trying to be a helpful member of the community and I can't do that because I don't know the math.
Hello everyone, this is Emmanuel Cook. We will be reacting to a new video today, so make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe down below, and let's get into the video.
Y'all, the kids can't read. They said that the 8th grade reading scores are some of the lowest they've ever been. The kids can't read. The president wanted to be the first president to attend a Super Bowl. Not the first president to get the reading scores up. Not the first president to make the biggest dent in inflation. Drop them prices. Drop them egg prices. Okay? Not the first president to drop that debt. The kids can't read. You didn't sign every bill under the sun. Pen probably on fire. But the kids can't read? Y'all don't want the kids to have school lunches, school breakfast, and they can't read? Books is old? Y'all on the news discussing Kendrick Lamar's halftime performance. Do y'all have children? Are you reading them to bed? Read them kids to bed. Get them reading a novel a month, at least. Let's tap back into the Scholastic Book Fair. Don't get no pens and highlighters, babe. Get a book. The kids can't read. Y'all worried about the wrong thing. The wrong thing.
The kids do not know how to read. Hell, the adults do not know how to read. I look at some of the comment sections and I can tell that a vast majority of the people living amongst us are reading on a 3rd grade reading level as grown adults. And it's no funny business, it's for real. And the teachers have been sounding the alarm on this for a while. Black women have been sounding the alarm on this for a while, but y'all refuse to listen. But maybe we're here now and the time is like, if we're fixing all the rest of this country, might as well fix the fact that people do not know how to read. I think there are many factors as to why literacy rates have dropped in the US, especially for minority groups. We can always blame systems, but I will always make it a point to blame the parents. Your kid, Timmy, cannot read and cannot sound out basic words because you are not parenting. You are leaving your parenting to Miss Rachel and whoever else is on the TV screen. It's not going to cut it, especially in the US where reading and basic comprehension are just not prioritized or focused on in the school system, especially in marginalized areas. By the time I got to public school in high school, it was clear that there are some people who had completely missed the boat. And by that point, it's so hard to course correct. You're cooked, buddy. And of course, we're going to blame the fact that you probably went to public school with low funding, not enough resources to help you get the individualized attention you needed. But also, where were your parents? Like, my parents understood that this country was not going to give me the tools necessary to be a critical thinker and be ahead of my class. So at home, I was the kid who was doing, if Johnny had 8 apples and he gave away 2, what's the number? My parents would print out math problems for us to do, reading comprehension skills for us to do. The summertime, we always had to read multiple books because they knew that they had to supplement the public school education with their own parenting. And God forbid we fell behind in any of our classes or reading comprehension. My parents would be the first ones at that school figuring out how I was left behind and how I'm going to make it up, because there's no way I'm going to be falling behind in any of my basic classes. That hands-on parenting is critical in all areas of life, but it's specifically critical when it comes to reading and reading comprehension, because these schools will continuously leave us Black kids behind. And if you don't have Black parents involved, these school systems feel like we don't have parents. Like, they will literally pull fast games, pull us out of classes, give us random grades, not give us individualized attention we need until a parent pulls up to that school. Okay. And so you can blame the fact that you're going to X and X school and they don't have X and X funding. But as a parent, what are you going to do to supplement the failures of your environment? There's no reason why your kid should be reading on a third grade reading level in high school. Multiple alarms fail to go off, but a big one is parent involvement. And that's the hill I'm willing to die on.
All you teachers screaming about, the kids can't read, the kids can't read. Did you stop to think that maybe their parents can't either? What if I told you parent and adult illiteracy rates in this country were skyrocketing through the roof? How would you feel then with your judgy self-righteous selves? Let's take a look. As of 2022, only 21% of adults in the United States are illiterate. 54% of those have a literacy rate below the 6th grade level. Meaning if they were in my 4th or 5th grade class, they might be struggling. That's what level the parents are on. Not all, but some. 55% of American adults under 30 cannot read, and it's specifically because our schools refuse to teach them and have effectively not been doing so for a while. As I've said in many of my videos, our failure is not on accident, it's by design. So the kids can't read and they're struggling. You blame the parents. Horrible, horrible parents at home. But the parents are struggling also. I love stats, so let's continue. Approximately 32 million adults in the United States cannot read, according to the U.S. Department of Education and the National Institute of Literacy. Low rates of literacy cost the United States up to $2.2 trillion per year. 130 million Americans, nearly a quarter of the Americans in this country, have low literacy rates of reading and low literacy skills, and read below a 6th grade level. Y'all see? You see this? Let's look at some data averages by state. Take a look at the colors. The lighter colors are at risk. The darker colors are proficient. Do you see any trends in any states? Notice anything? Minnesota and New Hampshire have the highest literacy scores of any state at 279. On the other hand, states like Louisiana, Mississippi, and New Mexico have the lowest average scores at 252. New York is also very low, as is New Jersey, Texas, Florida, and California. So the kids can't read and the kids are struggling, and of course, you blame the parents. But the parents can't read and they're struggling too. Story time. I usually teach all the siblings and cousins in one family in my classroom, and one year I had all the brothers and all the sisters in this one family. Kids were very low and struggling. Couldn't read, couldn't compute. I gave them intervention, small group. They left the room with another teacher. I spoke to last year's teacher. I didn't know what to do. Come to find out, mom couldn't read either. Didn't want her kids to be screened for SPED because of the shame she felt.
And this is why education is so important. If you know how to read, the chances are you will teach your children how to read as well. But if you are illiterate, then there's a high chance that your children will be as well.
Now that America has woken up to the fact that kids are not able to read at their grade level, I want to show you what it looks like to read at their grade level, or said specific grade level. So I gave this reading, mind you, it's a Spanish reading, for kids who are taking a pre-AP and a AP Spanish course at my school. Now, this is a college level course, and I have kids who are between 14 and 17 taking this course. At this level, kids should be able to give me a summary of this story, tell me about the characters, how are they characterized in this story, what are the relationships in this story, and a couple of inferences that they can make after reading this story, and tell me what is the main idea or message of the story. If kids at this level are unable to do that, that means they cannot read. And I think that most times, most parents think that if a kid can read a word, that means that your kid knows how to read. When in all actuality, reading is recognizing the word, saying the word, and also understanding what the text is saying and applying the text to real world situations. That is what reading is. So when it comes to this story that my students read, a lot of them, when I asked them what is the main idea, which is a question that can tell you a lot about how your students are reading, a lot of the kids said that the main idea of the story was that it's about a little girl who likes to talk a lot. When in actuality, yes, that is in the story, right? It is about a girl who does talk a lot. However, that is not the main idea of the story. And to me, that tells me that the kids read at a very surface level, not at the level that I want them to be reading, which is at a high school level. They're reading at a lower level. Granted, this wasn't all of the students, but literally more than 60% of the students answered that as the main idea, which tells me that they're reading at a lower level. Because first of all, they were not able to recognize that the story has a message. And for the reader, it's important for them to get the message of the story because it's teaching a lesson. And they also have to understand that depending on what they're reading, every specific reading is going to have either a message or a purpose. And students need to understand that. Kids need to also be able to make meaning out of words that they don't know, phrases that they don't know. They need to pick out symbolism. How does symbolism help to make sense of the story? Characterization, irony, like all of these literary elements, they need to be able to pinpoint in order to be able to say that they are readers and reading at a high school or college level. So again, y'all, reading is not just saying a word. It's being able to say the word and understand what you're reading and making sense of it in order to apply it to the world. That is reading. Reading is not just saying the words. Repeat it after me. Reading is not just saying the words. If you want to see how I break this down, let me know in the comments. Leave a like, follow, or share. Bye.
Can confirm, as someone who just started substitute teaching, I can confirm that everything that the lady said in the TikTok I just stitched is very true. These kids cannot read. My first substitute assignment, I subbed in for a middle school English teacher. She left a packet of work for her students to complete in her absence. She left instructions for me to follow, and I looked over the packet. I'm thinking, oh, this is pretty standard stuff. It was like grammar practice with commas, and then they had to do like a crossword puzzle with some vocab words, use the vocab words in a sentence. I'm like, okay, this is basically your standard middle school busy work. I'm like, they'll knock this out, and then I figured they would be chill. Boy, was I wrong. The first thing that really shocked me was the fact that I had to tell so many students to write their name on their paper. And then when they did, they would only write their first name. No last name, no date, no period. They were in none of that. I'm like, why do I have to tell y'all to write your full name? And then the penmanship, my God. I was like, I'm thinking to myself, y'all are what, 7th grade? Why are y'all writing like some of them wrote like a second or first grader, like in terms of the penmanship, the quality. I'm like, this looks like chicken scratch. And so the writing, because reading and writing are, let's be clear, the two go together. So that should have been my first clue, honestly. But that is what kind of shocked me first. Then when it came to time for them to actually do the packets, the kids did not want to read the instructions. They would literally take the packet and be like, raise their hand, I don't know what to do. I'm like, what do you mean you don't know what to do? The first thing I asked them, did you read the instructions? They'd be like, oh, no. And I was like, read the instructions and then see if you still have questions. And then come to find out, a lot of these kids, like, they're not comfortable reading. By day 2 of my second assignment, it had become abundantly clear to me. America has a problem, and it's that these kids can't read. Like young Gen Z and these Gen Alpha babies, yeah, they can't read. They cannot read. And like another thing that shocked me was how low their vocabulary was and like their word recognition. They did not know how to recognize or pronounce certain words. I had some student ask me how to pronounce the word abbreviation and then ask me what that meant. One girl didn't know what segregated meant. So I was just like, y'all are like 12 or 13 that don't know what segregated means, don't know what an abbreviation is. I was just really, really shocked that these kids... my theory is COVID. I blame COVID and George Bush because that motherfucker left a lot of kids behind. And COVID, I felt like there was a gap with everyone having to be remote, but it was just crazy to actually see in real time, like, yeah, these kids can't read.
And as for me, when I first came to the United States, I had a hard time reading. But over time, as I read more and more, I got used to it. And then it becomes a natural thing like that. But it takes a lot of practice. And the thing is, in this country specifically, we hardly have the time for ourselves. A lot of people have 2 jobs. And so they come home exhausted and have no time for themselves, yet alone their children. Parents do not read with their children, and they are just extremely tired, honestly. And I know that is not an excuse, but at the same time, I don't think that this country creates a environment for kids to read at a high level. A quick reminder, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe down below, and let's continue the video.
I remember being in the 7th grade and I could not keep my hand off of a book. Like, that's how much I was reading. You couldn't keep my hand off of a book. Like, I had a book everywhere I went. I had a book in my backpack when I went to school. I had a book when I got home, ready to read. I had a book. Even when I went to church, I had a book. Like, they were sitting there singing, and I was just in my book. Like, it just amazed me, the stories that I read in those books. The stuff I learned from those books, no teacher could have ever taught me. When I'm telling you, these kids nowadays, they don't read. And I'm not sitting there and saying they can't read off of a worksheet. These kids, they don't take a book and they don't read stories. They don't imagine. They don't know how to sit there and like read some words and fantasize it in their head. They're missing that connection because they don't read. It's like they're missing that foundation. They don't have it. They don't have it, okay? I've been working in the education system a long time. I remember in elementary, like during specials time, every day we had specials. When we weren't in class, we'd either be at PE or we had music. We had a specials just to go to the media center, which is the library. We had a day just for that. They don't do that anymore. So we would go to the library every time it was special time, once a week, we would sit there in the media center. She would sit there and read us a book, and then we would have to go out and pick out books. They don't do that anymore. They don't do that. These kids are not even getting it at the school. So if you're not taking your kid to the public library, a lot of them don't even go to the library. Besides that, they're not doing that at the school anymore. They're not exposing them to the books that are in the media center. Unless the kid goes on their own, no one's taking them. I remember in middle school, we had a competition for whoever reads the most books, you get a trophy. All I saw was the word trophy with my name on it. I sat there and I read them books. It was like I was breathing them books. And after every book, she would give you a test, the lady in the media center. And if you passed the test, you moved on to the next level. I believe there was like 15 levels. I finished that in like 3 weeks. Like, just thinking of getting that trophy is what made me want to get those books out the way. Those kids don't have stuff like that going on in those schools now. So when we sit there and say these kids are behind, these kids can't read, it's because of the pandemic, it's because of their parents. It's not the same schools that we grew up in. It's not the same thing.
Hello, thank you for meeting with me. I just really needed to talk to you about your daughter. Well, apparently she's been really struggling with the material in the class, and that material is reading. She's significantly behind her classmates, and we've been working with her one-on-one, but we've been feeling like there's been a need for more of a push, and we were wondering how much reading she does at home. None currently. Okay, well, perhaps we could start there. I don't think you realize like how significant 10 to 15 minutes at home could be. So if you could just, you don't want to. Okay, well, I think it could really help her because right now she's reading at a first grade level, but she's in third grade. And as you know, tests are coming up and she has just not improved very much. And we are working with her. We're working with her one-on-one. We're giving her all the support that she needs. But, this is something where an entire support system really needs to help out. So at home, if you're busy, I think that maybe 10 minutes before she goes to bed could really be helpful. You don't see how that could, you don't want to? Okay. Well, I think you should try doing something like this because you don't understand, like, school's just going to keep getting harder. Well, why wasn't she left back? Well, in the state of Florida, we have this thing called No Child Left Behind, which kind of forces teachers to pass kids forward who don't really deserve to be. No, I'm not saying your daughter doesn't deserve to be in the next grade. I'm just saying that perhaps her skills are still developing and we may need her to stay and review things once again in the grade that she's in. Okay, well, you don't understand why it's so important. Well, as she gets older, she's going to need to read more, and this is going to help her significantly throughout her academic career. So that's going to be like essays and perhaps one day contracts and writing emails. She's going to need to do those things, and reading is really where that starts. So the better of a reader she becomes, the better a communicator she becomes, the more vocab she knows, the more she can communicate. You don't think that really matters in today's... Okay, well, I clearly have different opinions. But maybe just 5? No. 5 minutes? No. Okay, well, that's all this was really. Yeah, you can... You can go. Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's talk about it real quick. Let's make it make sense. I know all last week, all over social media, you saw nothing but teachers talking about how elementary and middle school kids are reading 4 years below grade level. Well, as a high school teacher, I'm here to inform you that high school kids are doing way worse. They are reading 6 years below grade level. The only difference is a whole heap of these kids are going to graduate at the end of this school year. And we are expecting them to go to college and obtain jobs when they can not even comprehend basic skills, which is why we probably see a problem with employers finding employees. There are literally high school kids reading on a 3rd grade reading level, and still states are expecting teachers to prepare kids and have them pass state tests that are on or above grade level. See, the issue is schools have dumbed it down for kids. They have made it so easy that kids believe that their only job is to show up and behave, and that should be enough to get a passing grade and to go on to the next grade level. We have a real issue here, and please do not talk to me about graduation rates, because Bugs Bunny could graduate in this era. Make it make sense.
Why doesn't my child know how to read up to grade level, right? So for one, we homeschool, and we don't have grades. We do not go by the grade level system that was created by who knows who, according to who knows what. I don't know. But studies show that children will naturally learn how to read around the ages of 8 and 10. Oh my God. That's so late, right? It's not. When you really think about it, it really makes no difference as to what age your child learns how to read, especially when they're learning how to read from a space of independence and curiosity and a self-driven need to know how to read. Because at that point, there's no need for force. There's no need for coercion or manipulation to get the child to read. You don't even need to teach them. My children are self-taught. Everything that they know, they have taught themselves, with me as their guidance. We don't use workbooks. We don't use any type of curriculum. We don't do any of that. We learn through life. We are unschoolers. That's what unschooling is.
Okay, y'all, so I just saw a news clip and it was saying that 43% of Texas 4th graders can't read at a basic level, so they're not reading at grade level. I have a 2nd grader and my child has to read 30 minutes after school every day. Before she gets her iPad, before she plays, she comes in the house and we do 30 minutes of reading every day. And she's only allowed to play educational games or watch PBS Kids. So she does PBS Kids, or she does Kid Academy or Moose Math. She doesn't really like Moose Math. Also, that math is very basic. But she doesn't like that. But that's what she does in the week. And every so often I will let her watch like Disney Plus or something like that. And she can watch Disney Plus and Netflix and all that on the weekend. But through the week, she does that 30 minutes of reading. And my baby can read. And I did not like when she was in kindergarten. Like back in my day, we did, Hooked on Phonics. We sounded things out. And when she was in kindergarten and 1st grade, they were doing sight words. I wasn't really a fan of sight words because I really believe you have to be able to sound things out. But they've changed that now. They have started like sounding things out, because that's my nephew's in kindergarten now. But as a parent, even though I be tired and I really don't be wanting to be involved sometimes as a parent, it's not just up to the teachers. I know a lot of y'all think that those teachers are not babysitters. They can't force feed your children the knowledge. My child's teachers, they call me. Like if my child isn't doing her work, I get a call in the middle of the day saying, hey, Ray doesn't want to do her homework, or well, not homework, but classwork. And I talk to her on the phone and she gets her act together most of the time. It's up to you as the parent to make sure your child is getting the education needs. And I know a lot of people are working multiple jobs. I know a lot of people are doing it alone. I'm mostly doing it alone. But you have to carve time out for your children. This is their childhood. This is their childhood. This is their education. And it's up to us as the parents to make sure that our children are learning what it is they need.
When I was younger, in school, we did phonics as well. I don't know who changed it, but bring phonics back, because that is crazy. As a child, phonics is the best way to learn how to read and just speak overall. Bring phonics back.
The kids these days cannot read, and at risk of sounding like a boomer, it's becoming a noticeable problem. People have their it's the damn phone arguments to explain why kids can't read these days, and honestly, some of those arguments are valid. TikTok is bad for kids' attention spans, but I don't think that's the sole reason. Every day, I encounter 12-year-olds who are barely literate, and I mean that literally. They cannot read, they cannot sound out words, they go by the pictures. It's insane. And America has always had really, really low educational standards compared to other developed countries. You can graduate high school in America with approximately a third grade reading level, not knowing what a linear equation is. Someone should have held you back. Someone should have prevented you from graduating. Someone should have caught that and addressed it, but usually nobody does. And then that same student who shouldn't have even passed graduation in an American high school goes to college, and they pay for remedial classes, hundreds of thousands of dollars for remedial classes to address what they should already have been taught. But back to the little kids. I've noticed that American elementary schools do not teach phonics anymore. There's this new sort of teaching method that's geared towards children being able to look at books and sound out the words based on what the pictures are in that book. Or maybe the teacher will read aloud to them, and there's this assumption that the children will just figure out what words and sounds look like based on the teacher reading aloud or by looking at the pictures. It's this sort of whole word or whole sentence meaning and word-based approach as opposed to a phonics-based approach. And a phonics-based approach obviously involves the sounds, so PH making a f sound, SH making a sh sound. That's the foundation of reading. That's what I used to do when I was little, but nobody here does it anymore. Obviously, there probably are a few schools still doing phonics, but I don't think they do it as much. The sort of whole word / paragraph and meaning-based reading approach has just gone too far. The thing is that it doesn't work. If you give a child a book with pictures of balls in it, various types of soccer balls, volleyballs, basketballs, a 5-year-old child, and the words in that book say, this is a soccer ball, the child might be able to pick up that each page says, this is a soccer ball, this is a basketball, and pretend they can read based on the pictures, but a lot of the time they fail if the text says something different than what they expect. 1 and 2, they are not actually reading. I worked at a wealthier, essentially private school for a while, and there was this little 6-year-old girl who, every time I tried to get her to read with me, she would open a picture book, and the picture book would have, for example, a picture of a cowboy hat, and she would say to me that the page said, this is a hat. And what the page actually said was, this is what cowboys wear. So she had no idea what the word said. She was going off pictures and patterns, and she couldn't even sound out a 3-letter word for which there was no picture. I have no doubt that girl is going to read fine by the time she's a couple years older, because her parents will catch that and address it. They'll read to her, they'll read with her, they'll catch her up. Because she has wealthy parents who have the time to do that. But in the vast majority of schools, the vast majority of kids don't have parents who can read to them for 3 hours a day, and most of those kids are counting on the actual school system to teach them to read. What bothers me about refusing to teach children phonics is that it is so transparently lazy. It's the easiest thing to do to not actually have to go through each and every word sound, because the English language has a lot of word combinations you wouldn't expect. And think about words like tough or thorough or pharmacy. Those words are really hard to sound out because each of those letters and even each of the consonants in those words can have so many different sounds. Even vowels in English can have so many different sounds associated with them. So English is a language where it really is necessary to study phonics, to memorize specific combinations of letters and what they sound like. And to do that for a lot of time each day, it has to be reinforced each day. You can't do it for 5 minutes and hope that you can spend the rest of the time hoping the kid will grasp it from full sentence reading or picture books. It takes a lot of work to teach phonics, and I honestly think that's largely why people aren't doing it. And not teaching children phonics is billed as this like progressive, creative, experimental approach. It's not progressive, creative, and experimental. It's just lazy. Common sense would dictate that phonics is the best way to learn to read, and there's a lot of studies and literature that demonstrate that as well. And it's obviously really important to be able to read. Like, every day I see teachers come on here on this app and elsewhere and be like, my kids, they're badly behaved, they don't know how to read from younger grades, they have like a first grade math level. And every day I walk around and I see children that, even by the standards of American schools, are dumb. And it's not their fault. They're not inherently stupid most of the time. It's just that they haven't been taught correctly. And nobody has enforced like a reasonable standard of education on them. And to be quite honest, children definitely should be able to read the majority of words by the age of 6 or 7, but I think even that is a little too late. A lot of girls can probably learn to read by the age of 3, boys maybe 4 or 5, but I do think it's very possible for children to learn to read a lot earlier than they do in the United States. I started reading when I was 3. And if you can't read at the age of 7-ish, you should not be allowed to progress to the next grade level, because you won't be able to do the work if you don't have the foundation. And it is really alarming that I wake up every day and I see like 16-year-olds who still stutter when they read long words, not because of a disability, not because of dyslexia, but because they literally are barely literate. That is a literacy crisis on its own. And it's gotten so much worse in recent years, and that is saying a lot, because even pre-pandemic, the average American adult was not very smart. The average American adult had maybe a middle school reading level, and now it's just dropped. I feel like it's dropped substantially since then. If you have a child and they are not teaching phonics at that kid's school, maybe take them to a different school, because that's such a foundational skill. And if they are not teaching phonics in preschool through 1st or 2nd grade, your kid is not going to be able to read unless you put in a shit ton of work after school hours to help that kid progress. And it's an equity issue too, because the average parent does not have enough time to be doing that. The average mother does not have the time or space to be doing that. The average mother is sending her kid to school and trusting that little Ella will learn to read in class, and that her teacher is competent enough to help her to actually read.
When I was 17 years old, I volunteered for about 1 full year, helping kids with their homework assignments, like reading and math and stuff like that. And if you know as a parent that you do not have the time, please find after school activities for your children where they are able to learn how to read, learn how to do math, science, and all of these various things. Make sure that you find good after school programs for your kids so that they are not left behind, so that they are reading at or above grade level. If you know that you don't have the time, if you work 2 or 3 jobs, make sure that your kids have that chance. Make sure that they are still learning with or without you.
Yeah, this is really concerning to me. And the other thing that concerns me is if mass majorities can't read, they can't write, they can't spell, that means when kids are performing at a very basic level, that's now the best standard. No, you know what I mean? So if your kid is in 7th grade and they can read at a 7th grade level, you're like, oh my God, people are going to start being like, wow, those are the prodigies, those are the smart ones, those are the parents that are involved. That should just be a basic standard. You know what I mean? So it's we lower the bar when we have so many that can't do good. It's very concerning to me. And the other thing is when I was a kid, I was born in 96. When I went to, I think it was 4th grade, they found out that I was reading at a 2nd grade level, because my parents, when they were told, because the teachers probably do say, hey, this, I'm having a little concern, instead of my parents saying, okay, and then going home and being like, sit down and read this book, they were like, oh shit, Brett, Lisa, we got to figure it out. And they put me in Sylvan, and even if they couldn't afford Sylvan, which I went to for a year, and then my parents had to stop because it got very expensive. So I'm not saying I'm upper echelon or elite or things like that. But even if they didn't, I'm sure if my mom couldn't find the money, she would have been like, oh, we're going to sit down and read this book every fucking night and make sure that because I'm not going to raise a kid that doesn't know how to read. It's very concerning to me. And one thing my dad always said, let me know if you guys feel this way, one of the biggest lost museums in the next to come future, the next 10, 15 years, is going to be libraries. because nobody values them anymore. Nobody likes books. Nobody wants to read them. Nobody has the patience to sit down and read them. And yes, you can get a lot of great, valuable information online, but there's something about somebody dedicating months and years and decades of their life doing research and putting together a book. Yes, books can lie to you as well. We've understood that. But there's just something about it that someone's going to spend that much time trying to get their point across. It's even better than getting the instant answer on social media or the internet.
Elementary school kids are not reading. Kids are not reading. Kids cannot read. It doesn't matter if your child's at an A school or if your child's at a D school or if your child's at a charter school or a private school. I have seen kids at all areas. They all struggle. They all struggle because they don't have exposure and they don't have consistency with reading. We can blame the Department of Education. We can blame the literacy rates being at an all-time high. We can blame the schools, the teachers, but education teacher of 4 years, I specifically teach kids with learning disabilities how to read and to read accurately. We're not talking about teaching kids to read with special education disabilities. We're talking about teaching kids to read that have not had that exposure and that just cannot read, and no environmental factors included. Exposure and consistency. These two things are most important when reading, and these kids are not exposed to reading at a young age, and they do not have consistent reading, whether that's at school, at home. They don't have enough exposure of reading in general. The perception of teaching kids to read is it is the teacher's job to teach their children to read. It is the school's job to teach their children to read. Have you been in a public education classroom recently? Teacher to student ratio makes it nearly impossible to differentiate all different reading levels consistently. And I'm talking every single day for targeted reading instruction. You can have the most experienced and most knowledgeable reading expert teaching your child. If you are not doing it consistently, and I mean at least 4 times a week, 15 to 20 minutes a session, it's not going to be effective. If you have elementary school kids that are reading at grade level or even below grade level, get them a tutor, get them extra support to give them those skills to have them be successful with reading. Reading is not meant to be natural, but you need consistency, exposure, and somebody that is qualified and knows the science of reading for it to be successful for any child in a short amount of time.
I read this article recently that stated a lot of people in America can't read. And it's not just kids who were affected by subpar learning during the pandemic, but it's also adults who lost their attention spans and critical thinking skills. Like, they can't read long text. If it goes more than 3 sentences, they lose track of what they were reading, or they can't process what they're reading anymore. Obviously, this is a concern, not only because we need to work and we need to read to work, also a concern because future teachers are the kids now. So if they can't read as they grow up and then become teachers, it's like a vicious cycle. Who's gonna teach the kids? But also, what are we gonna do in a couple years when we need critical thinkers to come up with solutions to new age problems? Anyway, I'm gonna try to find the article. If I find it, I'll put it in the comments.
I appreciate you guys watching the video today. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.